American Tower owns nearly 149,000 cell towers, and you've probably never heard of it. The steel your phone depends on doesn't belong to Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile. It belongs to a landlord. The carriers you actually pay don't own most of the towers their networks run on. They rent them. And the company collecting that rent is worth close to $100 billion, built on a business so quiet most of its own customers couldn't name it. Here's how renting steel became one of the best businesses in America. Undervalued. The business they don't teach you. Picture a cell tower. You'd assume it belongs to whoever's signal it's carrying. It usually doesn't. Back in the 2000s, the carriers worked out that owning steel was a terrible use of their cash. Towers cost a fortune to build and don't sell a single phone plan. So the carriers sold them off by the tens of thousands to companies like American Tower and Crown Castle. Then they signed long leases to rent the very same towers right back. The carrier kept the customer, the tower company kept the tower, and the boring half turned out to be the better business. Watch what happens when a second carrier shows up. Here's the machine. American Tower says a new US tower costs about $275,000 to build. Put one carrier on it and the return is roughly 3%. A single tenant barely beats a savings account. But a tower built for one can usually hold 3. Add a second carrier, and because the steel's already standing, almost none of that new rent gets eaten by costs. The return jumps to about 13%. Add a third, and it hits 24%. Same tower, same patch of dirt. The margin climbs from 40% with one tenant to 83% with 3. Nearly every new dollar of rent falls straight to profit. The tower doesn't get more expensive, it just gets more crowded. And crowded is the entire point. And these aren't month-to-month deals. A carrier signs on for the long haul, initial terms of 5 to 10 years, with renewals that stretch the relationship out for decades. Built into nearly every lease is an escalator. The rent rises on its own, usually about 3%, every single year, whether the carrier likes it or not. No renegotiation, no sales call. The number just goes up. So American Tower isn't only collecting rent from 3 tenants on one tower. It's collecting rent that's contractually guaranteed to grow on nearly 149,000 towers across 5 continents. Last year that came to $10.1 billion. Which raises a question. If this is real estate, why doesn't it call itself that? Because legally, it does. In 2012, American Tower stopped presenting itself as a phone infrastructure company and started calling itself a real estate investment trust, a REIT. Crown Castle did the same in 2014. It's the exact tax status apartment landlords and mall owners use. A REIT pays almost no corporate income tax as long as it hands most of its profit back to shareholders as dividends. So the tower companies made it official. They aren't in the phone business. They're landlords who happen to rent to phone companies. The tenants just carry a signal instead of a couch. Once you see the tower as rental property, the whole model snaps into focus. This is the entire business in one picture. The return on a single American Tower site sorted by how many tenants share it. One carrier, 3. Barely worth the steel. 2 carriers, 13%. 3 carriers, 24%. The line doesn't rise gently. It nearly doubles, then doubles again, because the third tenant costs almost nothing to add and pays almost pure profit. This is why tower companies chase extra tenants like their survival depends on it. It does. An empty tower is a liability. A full one is a cash machine. And the gap between them is just phone companies with nowhere else to go, which is exactly the leverage Crown Castle forgot it had. Step back and look at what that built. American Tower owns close to 149,000 sites worldwide, worth nearly $100 billion, pulling in over $10 billion a year, renting steel it mostly bought second-hand from the carriers. It's one of the largest real estate companies in America, and it owns no offices, no malls, no apartments, just towers. In 2024, it even sold its entire India business, its biggest international market, for $2.5 billion, to focus on the safest rent. Most people couldn't pick its logo out of a lineup, but there's a reason I keep saying American Tower and not its twin. Crown Castle owns the other big pile of American towers, roughly 40,000 of them. Same core business, same escalators, same three-tenant math. But Crown Castle got restless. It decided towers weren't enough and poured money into fiber and small cells. The little antennas bolted to streetlights for 5G. All told, it spent about $17.5 billion building that arm. The small cell boom came slower and thinner than promised. In 2024, Crown Castle wrote down its fiber business by $5 billion and posted a $3.9 billion loss. In 2025, it agreed to sell the entire fiber and small cell operation for $8.5 billion, less than half what it paid to build it. The towers were the good business the whole time. Crown Castle spent a decade and a fortune proving it. Here's why the tower half is so hard to kill. There are only 3 national carriers left in America. Every one of them needs high ground to hang antennas on, and building a brand new tower means permits, zoning fights, and years of waiting. So they don't. They rent from the company that already owns the good locations. The switching cost is brutal. Moving equipment off a tower means dropping coverage for millions of people, so carriers almost never leave. They just keep paying 3% more every year for decades. If you like watching a boring business turn out to be a fortress, subscribe. One hidden machine a week. Because the tower company isn't betting on any one carrier winning. It's the house. And the house rents the table to everyone. Now the fair version, before the comments hand it to me. The fortress has cracks. Fewer carriers means fewer tenants. When Sprint merged into T-Mobile, the duplicate equipment came down, and American Tower's been absorbing the churn ever since, around 2% of its US tenant billings a year. A merged carrier doesn't need 2 towers on one corner. Then there's debt. Buying 100,000 towers runs on borrowed money, and when interest rates climb, so does the cost of carrying it. And Crown Castle is the warning in the flesh, proof that management can take a beautiful model and set billions on fire, chasing the next shiny thing. The rent is durable, it isn't bulletproof. Which brings us to what these companies really are. So here's what American Tower actually is. Not a phone company, not a tech company, a landlord, quietly one of the biggest in the country, that rents the same patch of steel to 3 rivals at once and raises everyone's rent 3% a year, forever. Your phone bill isn't only buying a network. Part of it is rent, flowing to a company you've never heard of that owns the ground your signal stands on. You don't pay a phone company for coverage, you pay a landlord for the tower. Every time your phone locks onto a signal, it's reaching for somebody's tower, and odds are that somebody is a landlord, not a carrier. Here's my question, and I want real answers in the comments. What's a piece of physical infrastructure you rely on every day? A pipeline, a port, a data center, that's quietly owned by one company nobody talks about? Drop it below, it might be the next episode. Subscribe for one hidden machine a week. Next up, the shipping container, the steel box that moves the world and belongs to almost no one who fills it.